There's like 2 cars out.
Going live to YouTube right now. So just to be clear. Let's say anything messed up.
I'm not gonna. No one came to the door. I'm like, okay, cool. Now home, these windows. Just coming up the other side of the street later. Pretty sure the guy died in this house. Because one of the family members came. I was like, don't knock on this door. And my dad just died in there today. And I was like, well, it's not good. You have a good day. Yeah.
All right, let's get started. So guys, the thing that I want to start with is as we go through the script, one of the biggest struggles that people go through when they first get out there is so there's sort of like stages, just kind of set the stage for this. There's sort of stages to where people experience trouble in this job when they first start. So in the beginning, when you first start, the first thing, because the first thing you experience is going to be the thought that the script is going to throw you off, or that you're going to have trouble with the script, or what's this going to look like when I get out there in front of people. That's the first thought. Not that it's a problem. Typically, when people get out there, it's not that much of an issue. And they realize, hey, this is a lot easier than I thought. The script's a lot easier than I thought to work with. And then other things start to come up or whatever. But the first thing that a lot of people run into when they get out there is the fear, not of failure, not a fear of even using the script, but a fear of dealing with the customer. And the reason why this is such an important time in someone's career here is because if someone can't get over that fear, then they never work out. That's the first thing, where if you can't get over that, then you can't be good at the job. Now, the way that you get over that, the first way that you get over that, the first thing is you got to be confident enough in your scripting, your ability to do the script. So you'll get out there and you're going to watch your manager, probably pretty expertly go through the scripting. And it's gonna feel like, man, like should that be the normal? And the reality is, like, no, when you get up there, it's not going to sound exactly the same right away. And you have to remember where your manager came from and stuff like that, and the fact that they didn't always sound like that. I'm sure it took them a while to get there or whatever. But what do you want them to do? Dumb down their pitch in front of you? I mean, to an extent, some of them probably do. Like, I know for me, for example, whenever I'm working with somebody that just started, I don't use as many personal connections. I try to stick more to the script all of the time, the entire time, than if I'm, with someone that's been here for a while or something like that. The intent of training sort of changes. And so the way that you pitch has to change as well. And so, but chances are you're going to see more comfortability in them from the script. You should anyways, hopefully, right? I mean, if they've been at the job for however long they've been at the job for, I would hope that they're more confident in what they're doing than you are. And so that can give you a little bit of, it can actually scare you a little bit. So you get out there on the road, you're watching your manager, you're going, there's no way that I can be as good as this person. There's no way I can do this. And I remember going to my first door to do myself. My manager was with me, but my first door where I was the only one pitching or whatever. And it was this really difficult Polish guy who was, right from Poland, barely spoke English, and middle of the winter time. And he was not in a good mood. He was outside the back of his house, really old dude. And I did set the guy up for a patio door, but the conversation wasn't the greatest in the beginning. My anxiety was super high. I'm sure that I skipped steps, but I got it done. And the biggest thing is that gave me the biggest confidence boost whenever I first got out there, because setting your first house, no matter how bad it sounded, I'm pretty confident that if anybody else was there, talking to the guy, like I'm sure most people would be like, damn, how the hell did that happen? Because it wasn't a good pitch. I can tell you that, but it helped me gain a little bit of confidence. And that the reality with this job is that you'll get more confident as you go naturally. Like, yeah, you'll get more confident in dealing with people anyways, not in the job maybe. But as you're successful, you'll see more confidence. So for example, the person that goes out there and gets 4 their first day is going to have a lot more confidence than someone that's been out there for a week, obviously, and has gotten 3 leads over the course of, or 4 leads over the course of a week. Having a high volume of production is one way to solve the problem of the fear of doing the job, right? Another way to solve it, and probably the most important way, because everybody can do it, is you got to be as confident as you possibly can in the script. If you miss any steps, if you don't know, this is why we're so adamant about people knowing things 100% before they get out there on the road. You know, every week in training, if not multiple people, there's at least one person that's like, oh no, I'm going to do it my own way, or they convince themselves like that's a good way to do it, and so they go, oh, you know, it'll be easier when I get out there, or I'll figure this out as I go, or I'll learn the script better when I'm out there, or whatever. And the first thing I always explain to people when I'm in the initial training is you're not going to get a chance to show us, you know, how good you are at the job if you don't have this stuff down. And the reason for that is not because we don't think that there's any better way, or we don't think that, you know, we can do things better or anything. It's just a matter of when you go out there, if you don't have the script down 100%, then you're when you experience failure, you're not going to be able to assign a reason why. And so you're just going to start to blame shit that has nothing to do with the job. And so that's not a way to make yourself more confident. And then, you know, a lot of people are like, well, you know, I think a lot of people think anyways, well, it's my failure to get, you know what I'm saying? And I'll adjust and this, that. There's a lot of people that their pay is affected by how poorly you do. And if you go out there and don't know the stuff, and a manager sends you out there and you don't know the stuff, then they are to blame for your failure 100%. You know what I'm saying? Because now they put you out there unprepared. And a lot of people don't understand this, but it doesn't just become about getting leads at that point. It becomes about lead quality. If you don't know the script 100%, that causes you to miss steps. When you miss steps, you set up bad appointments. You don't set up many appointments, but you set up bad appointments. And so when a sales rep gets out to your lead, it negatively impacts that sales rep. And so the first step to gaining a lot of confidence is having this stuff down 100%. And that's why we don't let people on the road until they have this down 100%. The next step is getting comfortable with personal connections. And this is something that is a little bit more difficult, I think, for some people to do. Other people are fine at it and have an easy job with it. But I think the benefit of personal connections, you know, look, I think personal connections can be overrated for some people. I've seen plenty of people do great in the job and make little to no personal connections. So you don't have to be the most personable person to do well at the job. But it will help your confidence level when you're able to talk to people. And I'll tell you what, it's a lot more fun to go out there and make personal connections with people and set leads that way. Hey, is this your notebook?
Yeah, dude.
There you go.
Lost this like last week.
It's amazing what you find on my desk. So when you're able to make the personal connections, it makes you more comfortable. It makes the job more fun. And you're not just saying a script to people all day. That's taxing to go out there all day and say the script to people all day without any personal connections. That's boring. I can't think of anything more boring than that, you know? And so, you know, and again, you know, people could perceive the job then at that point as not just boring, but difficult to do. So when you're able to make personal connections with people, it makes the job more fun. It makes it easier for you. You just can't let them overwhelm your script. But that's sort of the next step to your confidence. As you come into the job, the first step is the realization that it's going to be a developmental process. You're not just going to go directly into it and everything's going to be easy and stuff like that. That's the first step. The second step is making sure that you have your script down 110%, making sure that you're using it 110%, because when you're able to do that, and you know this stuff so well that you can't make a mistake on the verbiage, it's going to make you a lot more confident in what you're doing, which is going to lead to a lot more success. And the third step is you got to feel better with personal connections and with window problem conversation too, because it's going to make you a lot more comfortable in the job. And again, that step, I would say in the beginning, it's not really a must. It's just you have to understand that that's going to come if you work it. But some people have to force themselves to do it. You know, when I was out with Scott, you know, relatively recently here, one of the biggest things for him was he is so good at, he's a little bit older than the average person in this job, closer to 40 years old. And so his ability to connect with some customers and the level of trust that they have is higher going up there. So that's a positive thing for him. He's very calm in any situation. And so even if he's dealing with a difficult customer, he's still calm. He remains confident and calm. And it comes off as confidence when he's out there because he's very calm. And he knows his script through and through. Where he would struggle, for example, was in making personal connections with the customer. So when I walk up to a house, automatically my brain goes to, okay, what kind of windows do they have and what kind of problems are they experiencing? And then secondarily, what is different and unique about this house? What do I like about this house? What would I say if my friend just bought this house and I was complimenting them on the house? You know what I'm saying? And so, what comes to mind is, we go up to a house, and we actually see the customer on the side of the house, right in his neighborhood. It's in Lancaster, one of the bigger houses I've ever seen, gigantic house. The chimneys were built like custom. They had like a chimney, but then they had like stucco structures built around them that made it look like this giant like factory, like medieval factory. It was really bizarre, but they were really cool looking. And there was like 5 of those, and they were, all around the house. And the house was huge. I'm talking probably 25 rooms. I mean, huge house. And so the first thing I noticed walking up was, and here's the thing, is that if someone buys a house like that, first of all, they want compliments on it. No one buys, I'm sorry, but this old dude, I almost said this old F word, this old dude has, there's no way he needs that much room. There's no way. This guy made it a point whenever we were talking about, free quote, good for a year. He's like, I don't care. I have all the money in the world, dude. I'll just buy the windows. I don't care. The super old guy. And he had no problem throwing that out there. He wants people to compliment his house. This is a guy who wants people to say, man, those chimneys are unique. That's cool. Well, how long would you buy the house? He wants people to ask him about his property. This is a guy who probably pays, 50 grand a year for landscaping. He wants people to comment on it. You know what I'm saying? And so the way I look at it, so when we go out there, when I run into that, I see something like that, or I see someone that doesn't just own like a Mustang, right? You could have someone that owns like the shittiest version of a Mustang, which is not that expensive, by the way, too, right? I mean, what's it, 30 grand or something like that for like the shittiest version of a Mustang? But if someone took that shitty version of the Mustang and dumped like 10 grand into aftermarket parts, that's something I probably want to comment on. That's something that I probably want to, because they put a lot of time and energy into updating that car, into upgrading it and making it better. So when I'm looking for personal connections, I'm looking for stuff like that. I'm not looking for, when I see a Penn State, sticker or something like that. Yeah, we're in Pennsylvania. We're in central Pennsylvania. So there's going to be a lot of Penn State fans. I'm not going to be like, oh my God, it's a Penn State fan. That's ridiculous. You know what I'm saying? At least, I would say at least, 94.6% of the people that you run into are Penn State fans around here. That's the scientific number, as a matter of fact. I did a lot of testing to arrive at that number. So the thing is that like, I'm not going to go up and say that, but if I see something that says like university, Penn State University, class of blah, 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 or whatever, or my son goes to Penn State or whatever, then the comment's going to be there. I'm not going to say, oh, you're a Penn State fan, but I'll go, oh, did you go to Penn State? Your kids go to Penn State, right? That's something that people are proud of their kids for going to college, even if they end up getting like some gender theory degree or something like that and end up working in a McDonald's for the next 20 years. People are still proud of it. And so I'm going to comment on it and I'll bring it up to the person. You know what I'm saying? Right? Yeah. I'd be proud. For sure. Yeah, I just spent 100 grand for you to make 20. That's great. I think it's good. Yeah. That's society today. You know what I'm saying? You got to take pride in the work done. That's what's important.
Right. Absolutely.
I'm being sarcastic.
Yeah, I got that.
I got kicked out of high school, so maybe it's like a scorned thing where like I have this thing against people. I'm just kidding. I don't have anything against people. I just it's funny. Society's interesting. So I'm going to comment on stuff like that. I'm not going to say stupid things. Like if I see someone graduated from Westchester, I'm not going to be like, oh yeah, my daughter graduated from Westchester. Oh yeah, party school, super. I used to go down there and get drunk all the time. No, I'm not going to like, no, oh, congratulations. That's great. You must be really proud. That's awesome. Did you go for teaching? Because there's a lot of teachers at the school and stuff like that. You make conversation about it that makes sense, right? And a couple examples of that. I remember, some years ago going into this lady's house, not breaking in, being invited into this lady's house during the job. And I go in and there's all these weird, like African, like sculptures and all these like pieces of art that are, clearly not from here. You know what I'm saying? And so I asked the lady, I'm like, this stuff is great. Now, I personally have no interest. I don't care at all. Like I don't, whatever, fine, it's cool. But I'm not gonna like make like, I'm not gonna like go out and buy that stuff, right? I'm not gonna like be like, oh man, I need like an African room and a Chinese room. I'm not gonna like go change my house for it, right? So, but it's cool. The cooler thing to me is like, man, this person put a lot of time into this. They must care about it. So that's what I'm going to talk to them about. So I asked her where she got the stuff from. She's like, yeah, every time I travel somewhere, I bring something back. And I'm like, man, you must have traveled a lot in your life. She's an older lady. And she's like, yeah, I'm actually going to, Kenya, or whatever, next month or this and that. And so we get into this whole long conversation about that. And again, I had genuine interest in why she was interested in that, right? And so another example is I go into this guy's house and same kind of thing, but more like American style, like American colonial style, like older antiques or whatever from the US. He had them all over the place, a big grandfather clock. He had, rifles and shit like that, all kinds of stuff like that. And so I said to the guy, again, where do you get this stuff? This is great. And he goes, well, I go to different places and get it, but a lot of this stuff that I've gotten from this antique store down in Doylestown. It was when I was in Philadelphia. And so the first thing I asked was, it wasn't like I didn't like pretend like, oh, that's cool, whatever. I maybe pretended a little bit, but I was like, man, I'd really like to check out what they have. Can you give me the name of that store? He's like, oh yeah, I'll write down their name and address. He looks up, writes down their name and address and stuff, and he never hands it to me. I go through, I set the guy up for an appointment. I leave the house. I get halfway down the road. It's, near the end of the day, we're about to get the van. And I'm like, oh crap, I never grabbed that information. Now, most people, I had no plans on visiting this place. Most people would just walk away and go, okay, well, whatever. But in my mind, I'm going, I want this guy to think that I genuinely care. I'm not going to like BS this guy. So I better go get that information, because how much can I really care if I just walk away and never grab the information from him? So I walk back, knock back on the door, ask him for hey man, you forgot to give me this and that. He handed it to me and then I left. You know what I'm saying? But again, the genuine care, the genuine interest is what people are looking for in personal connections. And you'll meet a lot of interesting people. Not every situation's a good situation. I met a lady one time. I walked into her house. It was a very somber day. She was very nice. She invited me in, and I saw a bunch of like memorial pins, like, when someone dies and they make like pins for like events and stuff like that. So like my kid's godfather, he died in a fire a couple of years ago. He's a firefighter. And so we have all like beer cans with him on it, shirts, like, they make all these memorial stuff or whatever. And so I saw a bunch of pins there. So clearly it's one of their family members. I assume they don't just collect pins from funerals. That's fucking weird. So I said to the person, you mind me asking, who's that? What happened? And it was her son, and he got shot and killed in Philadelphia as a police officer, And so she started crying or whatever. And I felt terrible for her. Her husband comes out. They showed me, they had like a setup with his badge and gun and stuff like that. And all like his hat and stuff in this like kind of like shrine type thing. And, yeah, I mean, it was beautiful. And it was a good conversation. And, we eventually set up an appointment. They didn't set one up that day, for obvious reasons. He had just passed away like 2 weeks before that, and they were having a memorial service for him. So it was like a really difficult situation. But for me to be able to share that with those people, it meant a lot to me. And I think it meant a lot to them as well. They eventually did set up an appointment. No, that's the important part of the story, but it's just, those are the connections that are worth making. So, you don't want to go out there and be like, oh, hi, Mr. Jones. That's a nice car that you have in the driveway. Is that your car? Oh, no, actually, that's my kid's car. Oh, well, you can tell him that he has a very nice car. Okay, what the hell do you want? You know what I'm saying? Like, no one's going to care. Or, oh, Mr. Jones, you're a Steelers fan. I'm a Steelers fan. I like your Steelers flag. Actually, that's really, yeah, we live in Pennsylvania. There's going to be a lot of Steelers fans. It's stupid. Now, if you want to go up and go, man, Mitch Trubisky, he threw 3 picks last week and they're still not changing to Kenny Pickett. What the hell? They need to switch quarterbacks. Fine, because it's a very specific conversation. And so it's more than just, oh, you're a Steelers fan? Me too. You know what I'm saying? There's an actual conversation to be had there. And there's a back and forth. So like for me, for example, as a Patriots fan, I've always been able to, I like the competition element. Oh man, Steelers, I shouldn't have even knocked there, this and that. Like, having a conversation, competition with the person. I remember walking up to a guy with a Saquon Barkley Giants jersey on, And I literally said to the guy, "Oh man, why the hell do I have to knock on your house this morning?" You know, and he was like, "What?" And I'm like, "It's just Giants fan. You know, I'm a Patriots fan." So, and then we got into a little, competition conversation, this and that, and then it was great. We set up an appointment, this and that. There's a difference between dry personal connections and actually making connections with the customer. So the next step is looking for, finding, and having those conversations with people. Now, for a lot of people, that's not a natural thing, and that's fine. You don't want to force it. Try to get better at it every day, but it's not a make or break. You'll go. It's the difference between 2 or 3 leads a day and 4 or 5 leads a day. Okay, so there's a big difference, but it's not like detrimental. You'll never set leads if you don't do it, this and that. So the way that I look at it is, and the way that I did it was, I tried to get better at it a little bit every day. So for example, when I walked up to a house and I saw they had brand new windows, I said, okay, I'm going to go up here and make a personal connection first. Because I'm probably, that way to look at it, to just go, I'm probably not going to set this person because they could have a bunch of windows in the back, whatever. So I wasn't like that, but it was like, okay, I have a less of a chance to lose this lead if I screw it up. So I'm going to test my personal connections on this customer, because if I screw it up, it looks like they have newer windows. So I'm not making an excuse for myself for not setting the lead, but I'm going, okay, I'm going to try to, and I would test out a lot of things on houses like that. I'm going to try to rebuttal more. If I try to rebuttal more, then and we'll go through that in a second, test that out on those houses too. I'm going to try to, have a better window problem conversation. That's a perfect candidate because they have newer windows. So it's like, you got to really dig for problems. You have to dig to see if, patio doors. I'm going to try to have a patio door conversation. I've been skipping that, and I'm going to try. That's a good way to do that. But practicing that, as you go through day to day, will make you better at it, but it's not an instant thing. And so I would work on that because that's sort of the next level of confidence. Okay. After that level of confidence comes rebuttaling. The next thing that freaks people out is they're scared to get into arguments with the customer. And you should be, because you don't want to argue with the customer. That's not what your intention is. And so if you're going out there, you should be afraid of arguing with the customer, because if that's your tendency, that's a problem. That's not going to help you do well. That being said, I think a lot of people, when they first start, they can't find that line. What is an argument and what is a rebuttal? Okay. What makes you an effective rebuttaler, or whatever, that's not even a word, but what makes you effective at rebuttaling is not your ability to just push. It's your ability to continue the conversation regardless of what's going on. So for example, if I walk up to a house and I just sit there and I over and over again ask the person, well, the person keeps saying, I'm not interested, and I just keep blasting them with rebuttals, I'm not going to be effective there. At best, and this is a far stretch, but at best, that person's going to go, you know what? Whatever, dude. Sure, go ahead, come out, and then they're going to cancel after I set up the appointment, at best. So I don't want to do that. The next level of confidence, the next level of gaining confidence in this job, man, this guy's really trying hard. Sorry, I'm not playing against this guy, but there's a guy in the playoffs right now that I want him to lose in the playoffs for fantasy baseball. And this guy, he had 30 innings of pitching yesterday. So he went and picked up like every pitch that was pitching yesterday, and he's doing the same thing today. So he's dropping guys, and it's called streaming pitchers. You guys ever play fantasy baseball?
No.
Yeah, it's called streaming pitchers. So what you do is you go on any given day and you find as many pitchers as you can get, and you just pick them up. So he's got to be at his maximum. He's at 7 out of 12 ads for the week. So like he just picked up 2 more pitchers. So he's got picked up 4 more pitchers. So now he's at for today, 1, 2, 3, 4 pitchers just going today. That's crazy. And that's after yesterday having even more. So 4 pitchers today. So what he's trying to do is he's trying to win the wins category, which he is winning right now 5-3. So I don't know why he's still trying to win that, because the other guy he's facing does not have that many. Yeah, I don't know what his game is. He needs to get hitters. I don't know. We'll see. It's interesting to watch. I love stats. Stats are fun to watch. You know what I'm saying? So when you're able to get really good at furthering the conversation, that's what's going to make you better at rebuttaling, and that's going to give you more confidence. So as you go through these different levels of confidence, again, where do people get stuck up in the not stuck up, maybe? Where do they get stuck and when they first start in the job? And then how does that transpire over the course of the next couple of weeks? So we're still in that first 2 weeks, probably. When I say, what do we got so far? We got scripting first, okay? Going through the scripting first. We got personal connections. What else did I say? And then rebuttals. Was there anything in between there? Scripting, personal connections.
Yeah, that's what I have.
Okay.
Scripting, personal connections.
Cool. So the rebuttal part, that's that next level of confidence. And that should finish us up on that. So when you get really good at rebuttals, yeah, okay, yeah, all right. I'm just trying to run through in my head. When you get really good at rebuttals, and let me do this. I'm just gonna keep track of what I'm going through here, because if not, then I'm gonna screw it up. One more thing that I gotta put in there. I don't know if I fully went over it. I think I mentioned it, but I don't think I fully went over it. So with the rebuttals, before we get that, and this is again in your first couple weeks, with the rebuttals, it's about how effectively you can move through the script. Okay. So for example, when I say, may I make a suggestion, the customer says, I'm not interested right now. If I just say, well, I didn't expect to catch you on the day that you're ready to replace your windows, and then I pause, and we know everybody knows this at this point, then the customer is going to follow up with another not interested, right? And what it's going to lead me to do, if I'm doing my job the right way, which is still not the right way, but if I'm doing it the right, like with the right intention, I should say, then I'm going to keep rebuttaling that person. And so what's going to happen is I'm going to get into this argument with the customer, which is a back and forth where you're going nowhere. Nothing is changing. You're not changing the customer's mind or anything like that. And you're just going back and forth. They object, you rebuttal. They object, you rebuttal. That's an argument. Okay. That's different than a debate or a conversation. It's an argument. We've gone through this before. I go through it in the training classes with, debate. The way that you debate is important. So that's always been interesting to me. I'm not talking about like shitty, like presidential debates where people talk for 30 seconds and then yell at each other for another 30 seconds and call each other stupid and racist. That's not what I mean. I mean, like actual debates. Like, let's say that I said, and I'm not saying this guy, I don't want to have that argument right now, but let's say I said marijuana should be legalized and someone else said, no, it shouldn't. Then a constructive conversation to figure out why each person believes what they believe and why they believe that things should not change or that things should change. And if that conversation's moving forward, then it's a positive conversation. So there was this thing. I think it still exists. It's Intelligence Squared Debates. You find them on YouTube, and it's really cool. So they have a studio audience kind of thing. So they have, let's say 50 people, 100 people, whatever in the audience, maybe even a couple hundred. And before the debate starts, so let's say it was abortion, and someone said, well, I'm pro-life and I'm pro-choice. Before the debate starts, they'll take polling on it. So let's say that 70% of people say that they're pro-choice and 30% say they're pro-life. At the end of the debate, they do the polling again. Or let's say 10% said they're undecided and the rest divided. They do the polling again, and whoever gained the most percentage wins. So let's say that, I still had a unpopular opinion. Let's say that I picked like pro-life, for example, and let's say that I moved 10% of people over to my side and the other side lost 10% of people, then I would win that debate because you're focused on how you can move people. So kind of think of the customer conversation the same way, not as a debate about politics, but think of it the same way as what percentage of people can you move in your direction? And the way that you do that is by moving the conversation forward. When you get stuck in any one part, it's not helpful to your conversation. So I always use this example of sports. And we went through this, Jake, the other day, so I'm not going to go through with you again. But actually, we just did the boxing thing. We didn't really do the football thing, right?
Yeah, we didn't do football. We just did boxing.
You are breaking up.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, we did boxing. We never got into football.
Okay. So this could be an effective conversation, and I want to show you guys how I would design a conversation in sort of debate format. And again, trust me, this is work relevant, number one, and number two, and it's fun, but it's work relevant, number one, and number two, at the end of it, I'm going to give you the reasons why how you can win any conversation like that with a customer. I'm not talking about sports with the customer, but with Windows, or a conversation with your parents or at Thanksgiving dinner or whatever about X, Y, and Z topic. Okay. So I'm going to ask you guys this question. Okay. And I just want a simple yes or not a simple, team answer. Okay. And that is, what is the best football franchise of all time? So I need to think about it for a second. Of all time. Now you might go, well, I don't know, that's opinion, this and that. I have no idea. No, pound for pound, what is the best football franchise of all time? So for example, in fighting, they take, in boxing, they take account competition, how many times they fight. So in boxing, for example, if I go out and fight in 10 fights and I'm undefeated, they don't go, well, he's undefeated, he's the best, right? And we went through this the other day with the boxing conversation. So it's a pound for pound ranking is going to go based on a number of different metrics. So whatever metrics you decide, championships, wins, Hall of Famers, whatever you decide, I don't care, how much money they make. Doesn't matter to me. What is the best football franchise of all time? Jake, we'll start with you. Just give me the team. That's it.
This hurts to say, but the Steelers.
Okay, the Steelers. All right. What do you say? What about you?
I was thinking, I guess I'd have to go with Patriots.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we got a Patriots and Steelers. So I'm going to pick on the Steelers a little bit first. Okay, then we'll talk about the Patriots from there. So why do you see the Steelers, Jake?
I mean, I think they're tied for the most championships as a team. I think they're tied with the Cowboys, or they might have one more. They also have, I mean, if you look in the past, Ben Roethlisberger wasn't much, but Terry Bradshaw, they had the steel curtain defense. On top of that, they had Hines Ward, if you want to talk Hall of Famers, Troy Polamalu, James Harrison. I mean, it's a slew of players across their defense that has always had a stronghold, I would say.
Okay, so a couple of things real quick. James Harrison is not a Hall of Famer.
He will be.
No, he won't. He will not be a Hall of Famer. He was a more than good defensive player, but he's not going to be a Hall of Famer. I'll put a bet on that. And they have 6 championships. They have more than the Cowboys by 2. Okay. And Ben Roethlisberger won 2 of those championships. So what are you talking about? He was one of the best quarterbacks they've ever had.
Yeah. I guess I shouldn't have said that. It's personal opinion, but yeah.
Okay, cool. It is breaking up a little bit, so it's kind of tough for me to hear you. But all right. So, but if you're talking about championships and stuff like that, and Hall of Famers and whatnot, then why would you not say a team like the Packers? So the Packers won 12 national championships before the NFL was ever created. They won 12 national championships. Again, before the NFL was created, and they won 2 Super Bowls. So if we're talking wins, we're talking history, we're talking Hall of Famers, then wouldn't the Packers be in contention for that as well? At least.
Absolutely. That was my number 2 team. I had a little battle in my head which one was better, but I went with the Steelers overall.
Well, the reason why I would go with the Steelers over the Packers is because, to me, before the NFL was created, there was less teams in the NFL, right? Okay, you follow me?
Less competition.
Make sure you can. What's that?
Less competition, yeah.
Yeah, less competition. There were no black, for a lot of years, there was no black players. And there was no black quarterbacks for years. And 70% plus of the NFL now is black. And a lot of great quarterbacks are. Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, your guy. A lot of guys, Deshaun Watson for all his faults, Russell Wilson as well. So there's a lot of guys that wouldn't be playing back then, that wouldn't be allowed to play back then, or it would have been too much of a stigma to have them play quarterback or whatever back then. Plus, in addition to that, free agency didn't exist, modern free agency. So all the players for the Packers had to stay on the Packers teams back then. And to me, that makes the biggest impact, because you can never leave. You can't just go get a new contract and become the highest. Today in modern era football, those players would just leave their team and chase money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's why, to me, the Packers are not the best franchise of all time. Do you think that those things would impact that? Do you agree?
I do agree with that. I think there's much more competition with the Steelers championships that they've won overall. I'm not sure how many teams were in the American Football League, the AFL, before it became the NFL, but
15 or something.
50, yeah, it's half the teams. So it's half the competition.
Now, I want to ask you a question about the Steelers. So that's before the NFL was created, I agreed 100%. Now, to me, here's the thing that I think too, right? Okay. When the NFL is created, Art Rooney buys the Steelers, right? He becomes the owner. And really, to me, the Steelers history starts with Art Rooney, right? Like that to me is the modern Steelers. And he was really, really good. He won 4 championships pretty much right away. The team is sustainable. So to me, the franchise really starts at ownership of Art Rooney. Would you agree?
I don't have too much knowledge of that, but based on what you said, yes.
Okay, cool. All right. So my question is this then. In the 1970s, there were like 4 less teams than there is today in the NFL still. No modern free agency, no black quarterbacks. Okay. And many less black players. So wouldn't you apply the same rules that you just applied to the Packers, to the Steelers in the 1970s, and their 4 Super Bowls out of 6 they won in the 1970s?
You could, but then you could look at any franchise over that time, like the Packers, which are arguable in the same way. I mean, all franchises, there was more teams, more competition. Yes, that's
so I guess my point is this, is that if we're going to hold it against the Packers, which I definitely would, then we should hold it against the Steelers as well, right?
Then you got to hold it against all other 27 teams that were available in the 70s as well.
I agree 100%. Okay, so that brings me to today. Okay, would you agree that modern era football then is more difficult than any other era, given the fact that free agency didn't exist until 1993 in its current format anyways, and even the draft was different. Now the draft, if you're in the playoffs, you're automatically in the last couple of picks of the draft, where before it went purely off record. So you could win the Super Bowl but be 9-7 or whatever, and then end up getting a lower pick because of that 9-7. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So would you agree that given those circumstances, in addition to competition, modern day football, like you just saw the Rams lost significantly to the Bills, even though they just won the Super Bowl, modern day football is the hardest sport probably to win in. Would you agree?
It's the most competitive sport where I think no matter what the spread is for any game, any team could win at any time. I mean, the Ravens went to overtime with the Lions last year, you know?
I agree. So I have to ask you a question though. So there's a team that started in the 70s. The Steelers started in 1933. There's a team that started in the 70s that was bought by another person in the 90s and then won 6 championships from 98 to now. There's only one team that's done that. There's only one team that's been a dynasty since really the mid 90s, since free agency in 1993. And that's the New England Patriots. So then wouldn't the New England Patriots be the best team of all time, given all the facts and evidence that we just went through?
I mean, yeah. Okay. I want to say no, but yeah.
All right. So you see what I went through there? You see how I did that? Okay. So just like the boxing conversation the other day, I know the answers. I know, like, I control the narrative, right? So I asked you the questions. I said, just give me a team. Don't give me any reasons yet. Just give me a team, right? So I set the rules. I set the agenda, right? Then I knew what you were going to say because you said Steelers. So, and I get it. I think they're the second best team. So I'm in somewhat of agreement there. So I go, okay, cool. So then I use the Packers as a dummy, right? And I use that to set the agenda. I go, well, the Packers, 12 national championships, this and that. So then you're like, yeah, that's my second team, right? So how could you disagree with the Packers being a good team? Then I take it away from the Packers by going through these sort of things that I think take away from them a bit. And then you're like, well, yeah, I would take that away too. Now you're agreeing with that. So then I bring the Steelers into it. I'm like, well, hey, all these things apply to the Steelers too. And then you said, yeah, every team that operated back then, I guess, kind of falls into that category. The next thing that I did, which I think was a big part of it, is I said, would you agree that really the team starts under that Art Rooney? And you said, well, yeah, if that's the circumstance, which it is, then that would be the case. So then the reason why I did that was because if you said to me, Well, before Brady or before Belichick, the Patriots didn't win any games. It's before Robert Kraft. The year Robert Kraft bought them, the next year they went 11-5, and that was like 97. Then they went 5-11, but then they went like 10-6 again, or 11-5 again. So they've been winning really since then. So that gave me the ability to, if there was fight back on that, go back to that point and utilize that, right? And and then I got the agreement that modern era football is the most competitive, maybe sport out there, definitely time in football out there. And so then that way it's really difficult for you to go back and go, well, it's relative and this and that, because it's not, right? And so do you see how I did that there?
Yeah, it's almost like a tie down. Like it's almost like take one arm, take the other arm. And you just like for points of argument, and you tie down the one point of argument, and you get another one. And then you slowly just like put me in a box.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're doing with this job. You know what I'm saying? When you think about it, okay, for me, it's a planned conversation. It's just like when I say, I'm not going to take a bet that I'm not confident that I can win, right? So like when I bet, Tony the other day on, he says Josh Allen's going to be the best quarterback this year. And I agree that there's a good chance, if I had to pick one quarterback, it would be Josh Allen to be the best quarterback this year. But I like my odds. Hell, even if he got hurt, I like my odds. I got 30 plus quarterbacks, because Deshaun Watson will come back at some point, and there's going to be somebody that gets hurt, then another guy starts, maybe a rookie, stuff like that. So I have all these different options. Kenny Pickett could come in at some point in the year, and he has one option, Josh Allen. So I like those odds. So once he accepted those odds, I'm like, okay, great. I'm taking that bet. Fantastic. And then I pointed out the odds after the fact, right? So when you pre-plan conversations or whatever, when you're tactful, then you can win these conversations. Think about what you're doing in this job. You have the script down. The customer does not. You know more about their windows than they do. No matter how long you've been here, you know more about their windows than they do. You know more about the problems than they have. Maybe it's minus like a one guy who's been a contractor for 40 years, whatever. But most people, the way the conversation's going to go. You know when they're probably going to say, I'm not interested, or I can't afford it. You know how they're probably going to say, I'm not interested or can't afford it. So this entire thing, if you are in control, if you keep yourself in control, then this entire thing is planned by you. So, keeping along the lines of football, they say that the first drive is the easiest drive because you have everything planned out. So if let's say that I win the coin toss and I decide to get the ball at halftime, I've already planned out that step, right? Now, let's say I probably have a plan based on a couple things. If the other team scores right away, then I'm probably going to do X. And if they don't, then I'm probably going to do Y, right? Maybe it's the same. I don't know. I'm not a football coach or whatever, but I know that they plan that out. Then let's say, for example, I go to do my drive and I throw an interception. Now the plan changes. This is when it gets interesting because now I have to change things. Now I have to fix things. Let's say my running back gets hurt. Then I have to change things, right? This job is a lot of the same way. This is every time you knock on a door, you have control. It's the first drive, right? The things that you do will positively or negatively impact the game. If I'm up 30-0, then I can probably send my second stringers in. It's probably going to be a lot easier. I don't want to. So how does that translate to the script? Well, if I go up to the door and the customer's like, oh my God, yeah, I need windows. Let's do this right now. Then it's my thing to screw up, right? It doesn't happen often, but when that happens, I probably am not going to go, okay, listen to my script for 45 minutes. No, I'm probably going to go, all right, great. I'll just let you know when we come out, we go over your options, answer your questions. We leave you with the quote that's good for a year. That being said, and then I go through the 2 commitments and stuff, obviously, but I'm probably going to condense things a lot, right? I'm probably going to say, well, why, sir? What kind of problems are you having? Whereas typically I wouldn't say that. Typically I would say, sir, walking up, I noticed X, Y, and Z, right? So my plans change. If I go up to the door and the person answers it and they're like, yeah, no, you can screw off, right? Then my plans change. I have to adjust for that. That's not something that happens often. So my plans change. But on most houses, they're neutral, relatively neutral. And my job is to keep the drive going, by extending my plays and stuff like that. So when you think about it in that way, it's a lot easier to take and understand. So when you first start, you have all this anxiety happening. Okay. And so the first thing that's impacted again is your script. Okay. You got to know it perfectly because it makes it a lot easier for you to be able to do the job when you know the script perfectly. The second thing is, either rebuttals or personal connections. I mean, give it, any of these things really could go in order. But let's say personal connections. And again, this is something you don't have to do. So don't go out, don't go there and start forcing them if you're going to screw it up, but start to look for personal connections. Even if you don't say the personal connections, the way to get started getting used to them is say them in your head. When you're walking up, go, man, if I was good at personal connections, I would talk about the, flag that's right here, or I would talk about their fencing. It's really beautiful. Or I love that porch that they just put on, or it looks like they're doing an addition on the house. That's what I would talk about if I felt comfortable making personal connections. And then start to process that in your head. And then hopefully eventually you work up the ability to be able to do that. It's not difficult to do once you do it, but you eventually work up the ability to be able to do that. Does that make sense? The third thing would be in the order that I'm going in would be rebuttals. Okay. And that is, you don't want to get in an argument with the customer. You have to keep the conversation going. So don't rebuttal unless you have to, is the first thing. If I knock on a door and I go, good afternoon, my name's Paul Duffy, Mr. Jones. Or I go, are you Mr. Jones? And then the person goes, yeah, that's me. I'm not interested. I'm not going to go, well, I didn't expect to catch you on the day that you're ready to replace your windows. They don't even know why I'm there. They don't know what company I'm with. Maybe they looked at my shirt, in fairness, but they don't know why I'm there. So I'm not going to say, well, I didn't expect to catch you on the day that you're ready to replace your windows. I'm just going to go, no problem, sir. I just want to point out that we were just finishing up a job. By the way, I'm with Renewal by Anderson. We were just finishing up a job for Mrs. Smith on 123 Main Street. And I stopped by because you had the original vinyl windows. I'm not interested right now. That's okay, sir. I just wanted to point out that walking up, I noticed there was a bit of warping in the edges and corners of your windows here. It looked like they had been up for a while, so on and so forth. And, no, I'm not interested in doing anything with my windows right now. And that's why when I go, well, sir, of course, I didn't expect to catch you on the day that you replace your windows. But I just want to make a suggestion to you, sir. What I would do is have somebody come out to inspect the windows, make sure that we can even do what needs to be done here, find out what you want. I want to maintain control of that conversation, right? By continuing to move forward. All right. And then window problems would be the next step. And there's two ways to make those problematic. Number one is not being able to communicate what you see. A lot of people, when they first start, and this is a problem with training and management, I think, to an extent too. When they first start, a lot of people, they are not paying attention to specifically the window problems in their first couple of days, right? They're paying attention like vaguely, but they're not going, oh, okay, he is saying this because of this. They're going, oh, okay, he is saying that, meaning the manager is saying this, but they don't connect like, oh, glass impaction to this. Maybe your manager is like, hey, that's glass impaction, and that's what they should do. But you have to really listen to the nuances in the conversation and how the customer is responding to it. If you see your manager ask a stupid question over and over again and they get a no every time, you probably shouldn't repeat that question, right? You got to learn the good and the bad from your experiences working with other people. And so the easier the window, and then the other way, by the way, to screw them up, the window problems, is by feeling like you have to get a million problems. The window problems are important. They ain't that important. Okay. It's important that the customer understands they need new windows. That's really it, right? That's really it. Now, don't get me wrong. The more need you build, the better. But if the customer is, just smacking you over and over again in that section and not letting you move forward, then just leave that section and go to the next part. Go, look, we'll have somebody come. You say your windows are fine, Mr. Jones. Obviously, they're a bit older. We'll have somebody come out, take a look, see if we can even do what needs to be done here. See if you're having any problems. And if we can't be a service to you, that's fine. We'll recommend someone else who can. If you get stuck in the window problem section, you never move forward. The customer never knows what we're doing while we're out there. And that's the problem, right? Think about that for a second. The average person should get through the value of the visit, through the entire value of the visit, with at least 85 to 90% of customers. So if you're getting stuck before that, that means there's a problem either in your window problem section or your introduction, okay? And so you have to figure out, and it's not, I can't give you a perfect solution here, but you have to figure out what the problem is and why you're getting stuck, okay? The best way for you to figure that out is to move through it effectively. And the way to do that is just kind of leap of faith sometimes. Sometimes when the customer is not giving you what you want, you just have to move forward to the next section, trust yourself, and then see what happens. Because it's easier to deal with the rebuttal than it is to deal with a customer that's repetitively saying no to every window problem that you ask them or tell them about. So those are the two ways that people have problems. Now, all of this stuff, guys, will lead up to a lack of confidence, which ultimately. So my thing is here is that it's normal for people to struggle in this job. Okay. And this is why I'm having this conversation. It's normal for people to struggle. It's just like any other job. You haven't done it before. There's a learning curve. That's fine. Like we never let people go or anything like that on that. My concern is that some people quit preemptively on themselves. Either they literally quit or they just quit on themselves preemptively because of their lack of confidence in themselves. And then that comes from either a deep personal issue that I can't solve for you. You need to go see a counselor for that, or it comes from these things that I just mentioned. Okay. So when someone first starts, those are the first learning curves that they go through. Okay. After that, to follow up. Okay. So let's do this first. Okay. We're going to take a quick 5-minute break, and then we're going to go through the next problems that come up for people after they've been here for a couple weeks. They're writing leads. They're doing well seemingly, and then they start to fall off. Why do they start to fall off? That's going to be our next thing. Okay. All right, cool. 30 seconds, 30 seconds.
Paul, you're muted on the stream.
keep it again, and I like
Yeah.
it. Like, kind of fuels me. Like, I don't want to be last.
Yeah. And like I said, your team is good for that too. That's what I was just talking to Cole about, the other day. You're on a good, I mean, all the teams are good, but that team has done a lot to get to where they're at. You know what I'm saying? So it's good to see.
Yeah, in our sales meeting the other day, we talked about we each picked a person. We're like, that's your person.
Mhm.
That's your battle every day.
Good.
When you get in the van, you compare numbers. Whoever wins takes the day.
Cool.
It's cool. I enjoy it.
Good. Yeah. And you got guys like Ryan and stuff that have no experience that came in and did really, really well too. So you can follow and learn a lot from them. So getting started, first, what was your question?
I asked, so you get through your Windows problems and you say they make a suggestion
Mhm.
and they're just immediately like not interested.
Yep.
Do you fall back and be like, refer back to the Windows problems?
No.
Were you head to the value or would you just head straight, like give them a rebuttal and then head straight into the value?
I just go into the value because the person is clearly not like, you got to think about too. and this is what a lot of people don't think about is the fact that a lot of people don't give a shit what you're saying. Like they're not gonna if you go back to the window problems, they're just gonna get annoyed. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
You're already past that point. Move them forward, not backward. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not, if I go, may I make a suggestion? And the customer's like, now, do you mean, may I make a suggestion, or I may be able to help? What part?
I do, at the may I make a suggestion.
Yeah, so if I'm at, may I make a suggestion? Yeah, by I may be able to help, I mean like the introduction.
Yeah, no,
And when I do, may I make a suggestion, I don't want to move backward, because realistically, think about this. Let's say that I go, either I don't or I do, I say, I didn't expect to catch on day or replace your windows or whatever, right? And then I go back to the window problems. Think from a customer perspective, how annoying that is. It's like, no, I just told you I'm not interested, and now you're gonna sit there and tell me why my windows are bad. I know we already went through this. I get it, they're bad. You're gonna piss people off. You know what I'm saying? It's not gonna help you in any way, shape, or form. They're not listening at that point. They're not gonna go, oh, now that you put it that way, then, all right, I see that my windows are way worse. You know, yeah, sounds good. You know, generally move forward.
that's like definitely the biggest catch point, I think, is where I can get through the intro, unless I get a door sign, I can usually get down to the may I make a suggestion.
Mhm.
And then that's where kind of I get caught up.
Yeah, so that's the thing, is just treat it just like that. You gotta move forward. You know what I'm saying? Don't move backward, always move forward.
Okay.
And generally with any part of the script, I'd say, generally, you know, the only time I ever would move backward is if let's say, for example, the lead was really easy to set. I mean, unless I miss something, then I'm not gonna move backward. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Which generally I don't miss things, you know, at this point. So,
Yeah.
all right, so like I said, guys, after, so the way that this job is a lot of times for a lot of people is, let me see if I can pull up like a graph, make it easier for you to understand or see. I'm gonna paint, so you won't be able to see this, but Zoom will, and the YouTube will, which is important, because you can go back and check that out. But it's simple. I'm just drawing a graph of sort of how people do in this job and when. So the big thing is that when people start in this job, you know, they have no information. So when they first start out, they're at the lowest, you know, amount of information they're going to get. They're at their worst point for the job. Like, obviously, right? If someone started today in training and I'm like, okay, go talk to customers, they're going to be completely lost 100%, right? So what ends up happening is after your first week, you have a good amount of information. You have the script, but it's kind of jumbled in your head. But you get it, you know, it's there. You can repeat at least the words on a paper to a customer, and that's what's important. So then you get out on the road with your manager and you start to see more of the interactions. You see how, you know, sometimes how easy the job is, like how you can get leads relatively easily, or at least your manager can. And so seeing that is helpful to you. And so you incline in your information a little bit more and you get a little bit better. And then you go out there and you have a couple experiences yourself. And so then you get a little bit better after that. Now, at this point here, okay, you're probably at, let's say, week 2 to 3, okay, of being on the road. All right, I'm a terrible drawing outside of paint on here, so I'm terrible on paint as well. Now, week 2 or 3, there's an inflection point for a lot of people. What ends up happening is one of two things. Either they, in a healthy way, sort of plateau and they begin to like slightly climb, or like kind of like go, you know, up and down a little bit. So like, which is not bad. That's not a bad thing. So they'll, you know, ebb and flow a little bit. They'll get a little bit better. But they're still averaging between, you know, 2 and 4 leads per day. Okay. So they're doing good. They're having some days where they're getting 6, and then they're having some days where they're getting 2, but they're doing good. Generally, they have, you know, an easy time and they start to go. That's the way they obviously you want things to go. Is you're not going to go from not having any information to 2 leads to 12 leads a day to 15 leads a day. Like, that's not going to happen. So if you can incline from, you know, not knowing anything to, you know, 2 leads a day to 3, to between 3 and 6, you know, to between 2 and 6, like if you can teeter in between there, that's great. That's exactly where we want to be. If you're having, let's say, 2 4 lead days a week, and then two lead days a week and a 3 lead day a week, then you're good. You're in a good place. You're going to get a lot of demos every week. You're going to be consistent. You're going to grow. Everything's great. For a huge segment of people, though, what ends up happening at this point is they just nosedive, and they go down to from, okay, I'm setting 2 or 3 a day to 0. And it's a whole different set of issues that come up for people in that situation. And that's the danger. And it happens to a lot of people. And for some people, by the way, it's not 2 weeks. That's probably average. But for some people, it's a month. For some people, it's 2 months. So there's people right now that are going through this that if you look at their lead amount for, let's say for August, and they were at, 3 leads a day every day, and now they're at 2 or 1. And so our job in management is to bring people back up, but the people have to be active participants in that. So what changes? What makes people get to that point? The first thing is that you have to, in order to get over this, because a lot of people, they put a block, so they think, oh, okay, I'm good. I have all the information now. And so for a lot of people, the reason why it's tough to get over this point is because you got to be open-minded. You can't be closed off. You can't be closed-minded. If you do that, then it's worth nothing. You're not going to do well again. You're going to be terrible if you don't open up your mind to the fact that, hey, maybe I need a reset. Okay. And that's my next point, is that you need to reset your script. That's the first thing that you need to do. Okay. Now, the way to do this, first of all, the way to not fall into this trap is, I look at Ryan as the best example for this, for not falling into this trap in the beginning, right when he first started. He gets out on the road. He instantly sees success. Honestly, a surprising amount of success. I thought he'd be fine, but I didn't think he was going to average like 4 leads a day in his first couple weeks. But he did. He did really well. But what he was doing is he was continuing to study every day. So he would come in here, and for 15 minutes to 45 minutes a day, he would just sit there. Same thing with Alex, reading the script over and over and over again, saying it out loud over and over and over again every single day. And so he was getting his study time in every day, and it didn't need to be a lot, 15 minutes. You know what I'm saying? 15 minutes is all it takes. And so to get over this hump, or to get back to where you need to be at when you start to fall into this trap, the first thing you need to do is you need to open your mind. Then you need to reset your script. Go back to the basics. Okay. Back to the basics. That's really important. A lot of people skip that step because they feel like, well, that's beneath me. That's too low for me. Now, there was a guy named Don Bradshaw that worked for me in Philadelphia. And Don Bradshaw, if you haven't met this guy, I mean, this guy's voice, he had a voice for radio, man. I'll tell you what, he sounded just like the Allstate guy. He had this really deep voice that was very older than him, and it was very prestigious, and he was really great with that. I can't even do it. I mean, he was amazing. It was like, damn, dude, like, and he would, he would instantly connect with people. Like he would go up and he would call like every guy his brother, but it sounded like he meant it. It was weird. Like his voice was just very good for the job. So when he started, I'm like, man, this guy's going to be good. Then he struggled to get the script down significantly. So, we gave him a lot of chances or whatever, and he eventually got it down, but it took him an extra couple days to get it down. So he goes through the next couple weeks, and he's getting, between 2 and 4 a day, probably. He's doing well. He has some issues that he's having, mainly giving up too early at houses or whatever, but he's moving forward. Then all of a sudden he starts getting zeros, and it's like 3 or 4 zeros in a row. And so, and I'm working with newer people. So I'm like, man, I need some time before I can work with you. So I pull him aside, and I'm like, he's like, well, or he pulls me aside. He's like, what should I do? And I honestly, at that point, I'm just thinking, man, I got to tell this guy something, so I'm like, look, get back to the basics, eliminate every personal connection from your script, everything. You just got to get, just use the script, use 2 rebuttals at every door, 3 rebuttals at every door, but just go so basic that it's insane. Like, so basic. So he spends a couple minutes studying a script just to get himself back to the mindset, that he needs to be at. And then he goes out there and he doesn't get 15 that day. He gets 2 that day. And he comes back and he's like, man, that felt so good to just go out there, to know I'm doing the right thing, and to just be able to just get my 2 leads. That felt so good to do that after, 3 days of 0, And that's really the first thing that you need to do is you need to do one of two things. Ideally, you don't have to go back to the basics because you always have the basics in your head. And the way to do that is to continue studying every day for a couple minutes a day, not 2 hours a day, 15 minutes a day, just continuing to study. Because here's the problem is that you're role playing in the vans, cool. You're picking up bad habits. You're on the road pitching customers, you're getting leads, cool. You're picking up bad habits. That's the way that it works, is you start to pick up bad habits. So all of a sudden, one little change turns into 5 little changes, turns into 2 major changes. Now, all of a sudden, I go work with you, or your manager goes work with you in this case, and they're like, what the hell? You're not even close to your script. This is crazy. You know what I'm saying? And so you have to get back to the basics. After you get back to the basics, now you've gotten over that hump. You're back on the incline. It's not always going to be the same way as it was before. So a lot of people now, if I go back to my graph here, when they get through this, the problem is they end up getting through it, but they get back to their, kind of 2 a day, and then they kind of level off. And that's not what we want. You don't want to level off at 2 a day. You can do more than that at this point. And so the next step after you're done getting back to the basics, after you're done, again, opening your mind. And what I mean by that is you have to, you have to take your training. A lot of people, they feel like, oh, I've done this before and I've done well before. So, what can my manager really teach me now? And then they don't listen to training as well the second time around. The next thing that you have to do after that is you have to then focus on reinvention outside of the script. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean, and I'll use the best example I can use is when I walked with Nate, not that long ago, a month or so ago. My intention was, okay, Nate, you're good at this job. We know you're good at this job. So we're not going to focus on what you're doing wrong. We're going to focus on what you can adapt and what you can get better at, what you can do to make yourself better. So how can you find the opportunities that nobody else is finding out there, the leads that nobody else is getting out there? How can you find those opportunities? And that would be the big thing is you have to search for the opportunities. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, I'm going to show you what it meant for him. I have to send it to myself. So. I just send this to myself quick so I can bring it up on here and I'm going to go through it. What's that? I'm not sending you Nate's notes. I'm just going through it.
Sorry, I thought of something else.
No, I know. I assume that. I'm just messing with you. I get what you're saying though. I'm going to go through them though, and it's more of an example than anything else. All right. See. What I will send you if you want is a copy of and that's what I'm going to go over now. The ones that are applicable for most people. I can do that. Text me your email address.
I don't think I have.
I'll give it to you right now. No, I'll give it to you right now. So.
Okay.
Tell me when you're ready.
I'm ready.
All right, 717-364-8184. All right, so just to give you a couple examples of this, okay. Let's see. I'm going to use example 2 here, or note 2 here. I said, You are great at making the customer, so the note was use your strengths by paying attention to the customer issues. And I said, you're great at making the customer feel comfortable and you're great at keeping them positive. I only saw one customer even become neutral with you all day. Like everybody was positive. Every other customer was extremely positive while you were talking to them. Utilize this, for example, in this way. When a customer is giving you issues in the window problem section, so they're saying no to your problems that you're bringing up, instead of continuing to ask some questions, pivot to what you can see and then that they're going to have, and then go directly into the value of the visit. If you need to use what I call like a power line to get them back on track, for example, if the customer says, no, a company like this already came out and gave me a quote, I'm not going to buy windows, say something like, well, before I go, let me explain why we're different. Okay. So basically what I'm telling him is that you have a lot of leeway because the customers look at you favorably. Customers like you. And so utilize that leeway that you have. For a lot of people, they don't have that leeway. I don't have as much leeway, I feel like, as him with some customers. So for example, we go to a lady's house and she is in the middle of cooking pancakes. And so those burn easy. She literally has a spoon or whatever with batter on it. So we know she's not lying. Those burn very easily. She's just sitting there talking to him like, I got to go get my pancakes, but she's positive the entire time. So then he did the right thing and he went for a callback. But what I explained to him was the different thing that you can do to gain that opportunity is still get the phone number, but tell the lady, okay, I'll be back in an hour. Okay, I'll be back after I do these next few houses. Why not come back there and set the lead there instead of relying on us getting a hold of her a month from now or whatever? You know what I'm saying? That's an example of how you can look for more opportunities. You got to find the opportunities, you know? So, and this is another example of that. So there was kind of two that kind of went into each other here. Well, let me use this. Yeah, we'll use this one. Reset appointments that you're losing. As stated above, you do a great job keeping people comfortable in your pitch. When appointment's dead, you can reignite it by resetting the customer. If a customer is continuing to object and you feel like it's dead, use this system to maximize your potential. Go to resetting the appointment. For example, okay, so that being said, instead of having someone come out to give you just a quote, we'll have them give you an assessment on your windows and leave you with a free report and free quote. So you're resetting the intention. So the person keeps going, no, I don't want to buy windows. No, I'm not interested in windows right now. So you go, okay, sir, no problem. What I'll do then instead is I'll have somebody come out, treat it like a different thing. What I'll do then instead is have somebody come out just to take a look at your windows. They'll give you an assessment, a report on your windows, and then they'll leave you with a free price quote that's good for a full year. So you're resetting the appointment. So, okay, so you're not interested in windows, no problem. We'll just come out to give you an assessment then. And that's the most important line right there. The rest of it is just, you're getting back to the script, right? But there to the customer, you got to think of what's happening to the customer then is you're changing the intention of the appointment. And so it gives the customer a more positive response. The second thing I said, if that doesn't go, then go for something like, okay, well, if you were to do either a patio door or windows, what would you do first, right? And the reason for this is because you're resetting, again, the customer's mentality. So you're refocusing them. So for example, they might have said, no, I'm not going to do windows or whatever. Well, for all you know, they might go, well, actually, I'd do the patio door first. If I had to choose, then I would do the patio door first, right? Or I don't want to do anything, but if I had to, then I would do the patio door, right? And so then it resets what you're doing. So then you can go, all right, sir, well, a lot of your neighbors have, or why do you see that, sir? What kind of issues have you been having with the patio door? It's really easy to do that because they already offered up the patio door to you in that case. Okay. Then after that, if you still lose, then go to a callback after that because you don't want to lose the information. You might as well get something out of it. So that's an example. So let me just pull the script back up. Second. So those are just some examples of how you would look for more appointments. So you got to find the opportunities instead of just, having this, so you get back to it or whatever, and you're doing great and everything like that. You're setting a standard of, 2 to 3 leads a day. How do you look for the other opportunities that exist in the neighborhood? So when you think about it, there's a lot of people that go out there and they get, 4 or 5 appointments in a day and they all run and 2 or 3 of them sell. And it's like, man, those were pretty easy leads to get. Not that I'm not discounting what they did, what they did that made them talented was they went out and found the opportunities. So the customer that somebody else would have walked away from, because that customer comes out and they're kind of angry when they come out, they set that person. When the person gave the excuse of, look, my husband's not home right now, and I got to talk to my husband, they didn't just say, okay, we'll call you back later. They didn't just walk away. They found the opportunity. Okay, well, when are you and your husband typically home together? Usually in the evenings. Okay, man, well, let me just tell you what we're doing while we're out here. So on and so forth. Again, I know you said that evening works best for you and your husband. We definitely like to see you both together. There you go. Okay. Or, here's another example. Yeah, no, my husband's not around. I really don't want to set this without him. Actually, I'm glad that you said that, man, because when we come out to visit, we want to see both you and your husband. So it's really awesome that you already know that. And that we don't have to have it, essentially saying that we don't have an issue with that. You don't want to tell them that we don't have to have an issue, but it's great that you already understand that, man. That being said, what time of day are you typically both home together? So I'm not suggesting that you guys go make these changes right now, by the way. Especially you, Jake, just not even being on the road yet, but you've done this job before. So I think you'll acclimate to that part of it very quickly. You got to look for the opportunities that a lot of other people are missing. And the reality is, because a lot of people, they get in the van and they're like, damn, why did this guy get 5 and I keep getting 2? Or damn, I got nothing today. So here's the thing is, no one should ever 0. Like for me, I look at it like very much like this. I could never see me ever in no circumstance going out there for the day, for a full day and getting no leads, for an hour and getting no leads. I would never let that happen to myself. Never. Because you will accidentally stumble on a lead before you 0 out in a day, unless you are actively getting in the way of setting up good appointments. And a lot of people, that's what they do. They actively get in the way of themselves setting appointments. No one should 0 out there. It's to an extent, it's a numbers game if you're looking for the right opportunity. Okay. And so for that customer that you're walking away from, that's like, no, man, listen, I'm not doing windows. I just did my roof, this and that. There's a way to set that guy. For the person that's like, no, I'm leaving and going on vacation tomorrow. I'm not doing this. There's a way to set that guy. You got to find the ways to do that. And so the next step after you've gotten back to the basics, and it's very important that you go in this order. Okay. Because again, if you do this and you don't go back to the basics, you're not going to have your scripting down enough. And so you're going to fail at it. It's not going to work out. You're going to get a lot closer with a lot of people, but you're going to dead end yourself every time. And so you have to get back to the basics, reset yourself, and then start looking for the other lead opportunities. Okay. The other part to this too, the kind of final part to it is you gotta do all the things. If you want to do the best, if you want to be the best, you have to do all the things. What I mean by that is, and I'm going to release like a little notes for this too. So what I mean by that is that the people that do the best in this job are doing callbacks. They're doing callbacks on a relatively regular basis. They're going out on some extra. I would never, here's the thing, is early in my career, I would be like, yeah, okay, you're lazy if you're not working 7 days a week. Because when I first started, that's the way I worked. Now, I did it for a different reason. I remember this, guys. Think about this, okay? This is kind of a crazy story. But I remember I was probably 6 months into my job at Renewal by Anderson. I was living in this apartment on this street called Vernon Hill in my old, like right off that, in my old hometown there. And it's a shitty neighborhood, terrible, okay? I had my door kicked in. I was robbed at gunpoint with a knife to my neck. I remember that like it was yesterday. It was a crazy neighborhood, constant shootings outside my house. We would have like fights in the back of the house, crazy stuff. Okay, but I remember I would literally work 7 days a week and I would leave late, like late. So what would happen is I had a guy who lived with me, right, who worked for us. He didn't have a vehicle, so he would have to drive in with me and he'd have to come back to me. So every morning at 5 a.m., I would wake up like 4:30, 4 o'clock, and I would go to the boxing gym for like 5 or 5:30. And my trainer, Freddie Potenti, he would get there and it would just be me and him there for the first probably 2 hours, hour and a half that we were there for. And we would do all this stuff and stuff like that. And then people would start to come in and we'd probably be done by like 7:30, 8 o'clock. And then I would go to work directly after, or I go pick up this guy that lived with me. And then I go to work directly after that. Now this guy who lived with me, he never had anything to do at work at that time. I was a manager. This was after 6 months in. So this was 6 months into me being a manager. So probably a year and a half maybe in or something like that. So he's living with me and he's on my team as well, which is a dangerous thing. You never want to do that. He just had nowhere to live, so I let him live there. But we didn't get along after that because I get to know how he lived and it was gross. So I would go pick him up and he'd come into work. But for that first couple hours of work, he had nothing to do. So he would study a script in the morning, every morning, because what else are you going to do? At the time, even cell phones, like you can play little games on your phone, but we didn't have like smartphones the way that they are today. So you could go on the internet, I guess, but that's probably pretty much it. I mean, this is, 13 years ago, 12 years ago. And so he would go in and he would study. And then at like 10 o'clock, he would start calling callbacks. And he would do that until we left at 1 o'clock there because we did like 1 to 9. And then we get back at, I guess it was 1 to 8:30 or so. We get back at about 8:30 and then 9 o'clock some nights. And he would do callbacks until 10, which is, you're not even supposed to do that by law. But back then it was, we didn't know that. And so he had a big folder of callbacks because everything was paper back then. We didn't have ground force. And he would just call all these callbacks and he would collect them from people. If somebody had an old callback that they didn't like or whatever, or it's just like a name and number or whatever, he would call it. And so this guy would set like some days 7 or 8 callbacks in a day in addition to his leads. And this guy, because he's studying so much, he's averaging like 4 or 5 leads a day. This guy's doing great. Then as soon as he gets his car, right? He gets his car, he moves out, he gets his car, and then he doesn't do those things. And his numbers go down dramatically. Now, to an extent, that's fine. You don't want to be working 7 days a week, morning, afternoon, and evening. That's fine. Okay. So he's getting, 20 demos a week. You expect it to go down to like 15 or 13 or something like that. But he doesn't do anything. He never calls his callbacks. He only does the job. And so he goes down to like 7 to 9 demos a week. Okay. Now, still, that's not bad. Okay. At the time, keep in mind, we didn't get paid as much. It was $40 a demo at the time. Still, it's not bad. And it was much less hourly too. I think maybe at that point, we were at 10 an hour. But it's still not bad. He's still making good money, but it's a drastic reduction in production for that person. Number one. Number two, because he's not studying at all anymore, he's getting in right at the start time, if not a couple minutes late. He starts to fall off on his numbers, now because he's not doing anything. So when you go from working 7 days a week to working, like basically less than 5, it's going to have a negative impact on your numbers, right? So when I say do all the things, I don't mean what I meant back then when I said that, which was do what I'm doing, which was 7 days a week. I was doing it to stay out of trouble. So I'm living on this Vernon Hill, right? And this is why I was doing it, because I would get home late enough to where I didn't feel like doing anything, right? Because I knew that if I was bored, then I would go out and get fucked up, and then I would get into trouble. So I remember one night, it was my friend Angel's birthday. He was killed a couple of years ago. He was pushed off a roof and killed. And that's a trend. All of my best friends have been killed. 2 of them were shot and killed, and one of them was pushed off a roof. One of them is still alive. And so it was this one night, it's his birthday, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to go out to Angel's birthday. I haven't been out in forever, and I'm doing this on purpose. I'm going and working all the time, so I don't feel like I have to go out. But I get bored. I get home early. I get bored. Hey, it's right down the street. I walk down there. I'm sitting there at this party, and all of a sudden, I see out of the corner of my eye, his sister, Angel's sister, her boyfriend, punch her, hit her, right? So I'm like, oh, Angel, and I grab him. And I'm not going to give you the full story because I don't want to put that on YouTube, but basically I grabbed this guy. His name is Antoine. I grab him from behind. Angel starts beating on him a little bit or whatever. He eventually falls down. Angel ends up putting his hand through a window because he goes to hit him hard, and he threw himself on the ground, threw me on the ground with him. So Angel put his hand through the window, cut himself down his wrist like bad, blood going everywhere. This guy runs away. A lot of stuff happens in between there. I bring Angel to the hospital. I come back to the house. There's a guy laid out in the street. I don't know why. The cops are there. All this crazy stuff is going on. I'm like, what the hell? I get home at 3:30 in the morning. I got to work the next day. That's why I would work all the time, because I want to avoid stuff like that. Every time I go out, it was something dramatic like that. And so I'm like, I can't be in this neighborhood anymore. So I have to work all the time. So I recognize that not everybody is in that situation. Hopefully, that would be rough if everybody was in that situation. That being said, there's value to working a little bit more, to trying all of the things. So here's what I propose to you for the last thing. What I propose to you guys, and then I'll take questions in a second, is I would say if you're watching this, your start time is 12. I get it that sometimes your team might do a training at 11 or 10:30 or 11:30 or something like that. Participate in those things. Those things should replace studying on the days that they happen. But what I would do if I was you is I would come in an hour early. As long as you're working, then you get paid for it. And I would call callbacks for an hour, or 45 minutes a day. And then I would take 15 minutes and I would study my script for 15 minutes a day. Now, where this is valuable too is if let's say that I go and I call callbacks from 11 o'clock to let's say 11:50 or 11:45, then I get myself out of callback mode. I'm going to go and read the script a couple times in my head, read it out loud a couple times, and I'm going to read it. I'm not just going to say what I think it says. I'm going to read it off the paper, okay, to study. That's how I'm studying, okay, or role play with somebody else, but I'm always going to have the script nearby, okay. Then you get in the van, participate in role playing. If you feel like you're not getting called on a lot, speak up. Say, hey, I want to get called on more. I need some work. Help me out, right? Participate in role playing. Pick 1 or 2 nights a week to when you get back. Call not for a long time. Call for 15 minutes. Call for 20 minutes. 1 or 2 nights a week, okay? Once or twice a month, come in for an extra Saturday. Once or twice a month. I'm not saying come in. I'm not saying sacrifice every weekend that you have. What I'm saying is that to truly get your numbers into a good spot, come in once or twice a month on a Saturday or a Sunday. Do an extra day once or twice a month, okay? Because it's going to get you into a much better place. It's not just about the numbers. It's about the constant practice, and it's about the fact that you're getting better at your craft. It feels good to get better. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's how you get yourself over the hump. Okay, so we just detailed out probably the first 4 weeks of the job and doing it the right way. That being said, let's go to Jacob first because he's on Zoom. And I know sometimes we have like a voice disconnection here. What kind of questions do you have, Jacob?
I don't know if I have any questions like right now.
Fair enough. That's fine.
It's kind of still just absorbing everything, and, trying to get these rebuttals down. But for the most part, it's all pretty clear cut, I would say, between window problems, the script itself, and then the rebuttals as well.
Cool. Okay, good. Excellent. All right, what about you? Any questions?
So when it comes to callbacks, I haven't gotten a chance to do that yet. Do we have a specific script that goes with callbacks?
We do. It's very basic and easy. It's just like a paragraph long.
Okay.
Yep.
Who should I talk to?
Talk to Cole and then shadow Ryan on Monday, calling some callbacks, like coming a little bit early.
Okay, yeah.
And because he's really good at him or Alex, they're both really good at it. But Ryan probably sticks close to the script, so I would work with him on it. I mean, I've seen him set 4 callbacks in an hour before, so. Yeah.
I mean, I definitely feel like that's something I want to learn.
Yeah.
Do like is about.
Oh, definitely. They definitely is. Yeah. Yeah. Especially because you can call your own leads, but you're on a call list. So you can just, you get access to other people's leads as well. And my whole thing is that, the way that it works is like this. If let's say you set a callback and somebody calls it, in the first month, like from in here, if the call center calls it, it just goes in your name automatically, whatever. But if it's in the first month, then both people get credit for it. Okay. If it's after that, to me, I look at it like this. If you're not calling your callbacks, my job is to get leads ran. I don't care who sets it. So if you're not calling your callbacks, then somebody else is fair game for somebody else to call it. And so you'll get access to a bunch of people's callbacks that aren't even yours, which is very helpful, All right, cool. So we went just over 11:30, so that's perfect. I guess the last thing, I'm going to put notes together for this training as well. Probably make a separate video to just go through the notes just briefly. And then I'll give you guys copies of the notes as well. And anybody else that's watching this after the fact that wants copies, I'll have copies of them too. Sound good?
Good.
Okay, cool.